Put the chat back up. Great. So can I have another thumbs up or something to say you can hear me, please, and see part 2? Yay. Thanks, everyone. Great. So, yeah, part 2. Some different stuff going on in this one. We're going to start off with one of my favorite things. Japanese fashion subcultures. Woo! This is really absolutely fascinating. I'll admit to not updating this, looking at anything for a year on this, and so I kind of assume it's probably pretty still much as it was, and there's probably loads of new stuff emerging within it. But it is a completely fascinating world, and they have all sorts. So yeah, the most exciting, outrageous fashion subculture in the world. Large groups of young people gather, particularly in areas such as Harajuku and Shinjuku in Tokyo, displaying their own take on their subculture. And it's chronicled by a magazine called Fruits since 1997. Shoichi Aoki started it in 1997. And it's a great magazine, full of color, full of creativity, full of individual expression. It's a really vibrant sort of street scenes, really great. And they're split into subgroups. So they've all got their tribes. And this is the Lolita group, mainly based on the clothes women used to wear in the Victorian era. So it's coming out of like sort of colonial UK, Great Britain sort of colonial stuff. Dresses, petticoats, high collared dresses, bonnets, frilly parasols. It's a broad generalized term for these subcultures, as there are several other variations. And the thing you find with this is that there are subgroups within the groups. so people will set up their own little subgroup and start to hope that'll grow into a bigger group. So it's completely fascinating. Visual Kai. So this is a genre of music in Japanese pop culture. It's established itself. Its unusual style of dressing as well as the music. So it's sort of a genre similar to heavy metal. So as you can see, the costumes resemble a mix of Lolitas, goths, vampires, but this kind of dark underground vibe about it, quite threatening and quite sort of disconcerting is definitely the word. Well, these are the male hosts. So these men make their living by drinking with older women at bars or clubs. They deck themselves head to toe with expensive clothes, lots of cologne, and interestingly styled hair. So here they are, part of their own tribe. Great, but even within this, it's a sign of a uniform, but these wonderful little ties, the sort of mink there. It's just like everyone's got their own little individual take on it. Absolutely great. These are weird. The Mori girls, the Mori Kai, translated into English, actually just means forest style. These people dress to look like the forest with common color themes, green and brown. It's a very muted pastel, but it's kind of weird. A lot of this is coming from English culture, isn't it? And yeah, which is a kind of strange thing. The Gothics, here they are, similar to but more US European self. These goths in Japan express identities, show alienation from mainstream social circles. So expressed ironically through the use of dark, morbid clothes, makeup, imagery, and themes. So the Gothic is a fairly internationally understood fashion genre, I guess. But some of these young people in Japan, they take it to a real extreme. Cosplay, so we know about the cosplay. So this is a much wider culture in terms of actually meeting around the world in these big events. And I'm not an expert at all on cosplay, but I assume there's some sort of gaming, obviously a gaming sort of collection and characters from games. Has anyone got in the chat? Anyone know anything about cosplay? Can just sum it up? Anything to say about it? Is it actually are there actually games that get played by people wearing certain costumes, or is it just mainly dressing up and representing game characters? It's also from shows. Okay. Okay. What sort of shows, Khadija? What do you mean? Characters from shows or cartoons? Okay. Yes, I'm with you. Ah, yeah. Okay. So dressing up as certain characters from films and shows or cartoons, uh, and meeting up. Yeah, so anime. Okay, so it's got a link to anime. Fair enough. I suppose that's kind of makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Anime characters. So, okay, so that's the cosplay group. Gyaru, look at these. These are really spectacular. So this is the Gyaru group, or one of them. Amazing hair and just, oh gosh, yeah. These amazing boots and leg warmer type things, jackets, amazing makeup. I got a little video here, which is quite fun. A little video about the Black Diamond group. So these are the Black Diamond are one of the supposedly the top Gyaru unit, setting their sights on world domination. So let's hear from the Gyaru tribe. Black Diamond tribe, sorry. Yeah, amazing. So black skin Gyurus, I'm not quite sure what that refers to, but also saying that they're from 120 members, Hokkaido to Okinawa, so across not just the Tokyo group from the whole of Japan. 50 members, 20 different countries. I'm not quite sure. Remember that 50 member groups or oh no, 50 of the members are from different countries. Okay, so they're coming from different countries as well. Wow, but what a fantastic what a fantastic group. Yeah, if you get to go to Japan, do try and find them in Tokyo. It's quite an event. So when you get a group of a group come onto the streets, you get, they pose for photos. You get photos of people taking photos of them and posing. It's pretty amazing. These are the Decora group. So these are like the sort of slightly sort of hippie, oh gosh, sort of really bright colors, a lot of weird cultural references you can see from various other cultures. We've got the Rolling Stones album cover there. You got these tie-dye sort of shirts. Yeah, like an American policeman's hat. So really creative, crazy Decora group. The Zentai, gosh, these are a rare bunch. I'm pretty sure they wear these sort of bodysuits. Uh, yeah, really great. Very much like the Power Ranger type cartoon characters, aren't they? These are probably definitely taken also from some sort of Japanese anime or cartoons. I think a lot of them probably are. The Potozuku, more like sort of gangsters. You can see, yeah, the sort of gangster vibe here going on. So slightly more sort of sinister in terms of like a gang, but pretty innocent, I think, a lot of it. Great. So we're going to look at festivals and carnivals now. So sorry, I just lost my notes for a minute. So yeah, that's the Japanese fashion subcultures. It's pretty fascinating stuff. Okay, going to look at a section on festivals and carnivals, because this is where a lot of this sort of cultural expression takes place, especially from folk art and outsider art traditions, but more likely folk art, I guess. So here, yeah, of course, Rio, and there's festivals and carnivals all over the world. They range from spectacular to the obscure, but all are a source of inspiration for creative practitioners. This is Rio's annual carnival, the biggest carnival in the world. 2 million people per day on the streets. The first festival, 1723. Oh, 300 years old last year. Wow, I bet that was a celebration. So yeah, just amazing costumes, incredible attention to detail, fantastic design, really, really wonderful stuff. And the Mardi Gras, similar sort of thing, but much more diverse range of costumes and outfits. Southern Louisiana, New Orleans, 2 weeks around Shrove Tuesday. So it's kind of, yeah, the Christian, it's based around the start of the sort of Christian year, the start of Lent. It's French for Fat Tuesday. Begins on the 12th night, January the 6th, and extends until midnight before Ash Wednesday. They're like these amazing sort of Mardi Gras balls. Kings and queens come in, don't they, from wealthy families, debutantes. So there's quite a sort of structure of events within the carnival, which is a massive kind of huge celebration. But again, some of these pretty extraordinary sort of African, and we've got almost like, gosh, the black faces of some, which you see in English sort of Morris dancing groups. Yeah, a lot of references to African culture here in this particular photograph. So all sorts of cultures mixing together, coming to one place, being represented in different ways, and an inspiration for what goes. Of course, the Glastonbury Festival we need to mention, which has, amongst the music, it has theatre, it has poetry, it has visual arts, it has sculpture, it has dance. I mean, it's music, but it has everything else going on as well. Biggest music festival in the world, 250,000 people. So yeah, it's got theatre there, it has cabaret, all sorts, circus. But of course, the interesting thing is this comes from the subculture. So a major event in British culture, the festival is inspired by the ethos of the hippie counterculture and free festival movement. So it started off in 1970, I think, the first festival, very much a small thing for sort of hippies, people living outside of society. And it's grown massively. So counterculture has become part of mainstream culture. And this is the Burning Man Festival in Nevada. So it's once considered an underground gathering for bohemians and free spirits. Burning Man has since evolved into a destination for social media influencers, celebrities, and the Silicon Valley elite. Yeah. So what happens is participants design and build all the art activities and events, including experimental, interactive sculptures, buildings, performances, and art cars like this one top left, which seems to combine everything. So it's hugely spectacular. They're massive constructions. People spend all year planning them, getting it together, taking stuff out into the desert. So again, it's got roots in a very sort of primeval, sort of spiritual, side of things. And the end, there's this huge culmination, this huge symbolic burning of a large wooden effigy referred to as the man, which is quite interesting. The gender sort of like specificity. According to Burning Man's website, it's a temporary metropolis dedicated to community, art, self-expression, and self-reliance. Burning Man Festival, though, has had an awful lot of bad press recently because a lot of really rich people helicopter themselves in. And, you know, the sort of, oh gosh, the carbon dioxide releases, emissions, environmentally very poor, the whole thing. So it's had a lot of slack. And last year, I think I've got a slide of this. Yeah, last year, some incredible heavy rains fell. So it turned it into this quagmire of mud. Tens of thousands of attendees were stranded for days. And then there was this mass exodus when it became dry. So huge traffic queues of everyone trying to leave at the same time. So it was a complete disaster, I think, because of the weather. And it's kind of like a bit, you know, these sort of events do contribute so much to global warming. And then you kind of feel the world is getting its revenge by dropping all this rain on them. So, yeah, so the Burning Man one is quite a controversial festival. But here's the Harbin Ice and Snow Festival in China, a winter festival in Harbin, largest ice and snow festival in the world. You've got I think Sun Island is a recreational area on the river which features enormous snow sculptures. I guess it's these, and there's part of it's called Ice and Snow World, which I think is this area, which features illuminated full-size building made from blocks of ice taken directly from the Songhua River. So again, just to make that idea that take one of these, stick it in a Western sort of American or European art gallery, and wow, that's pretty amazing. But the context it's within, it's not taken as art as such, but it's clearly a very, very amazing creative cultural artifact. And here's the La Tomatina Festival in Spain, in Valencia, Bunol, near the Mediterranean. Participants throw tomatoes and get involved in a tomato fight purely for entertainment purposes. 2015, it was estimated that almost 145,000 kilograms of tomatoes were thrown. That's an awful lot of tomatoes. I mean, they do produce a ridiculous amount of tomatoes, so it's kind of like a small amount compared to what they produce. But some people see it as like food waste and all that. But all these festivals and carnivals have critics who say, oh, what about this? What about that? So it's that sort of balance, isn't it? Between something very positive, creative for the community going, and there's all the sort of, but what about the waste? What about the CO2 emissions? What about this, you know? So there's that balance. It looks absolutely great fun, whatever's going on. Day of the Dead, probably one of the most famous, Mexico's Day of the Dead. Family and friends gather to pray for and remember friends and family members who've died. It's more like a day of celebration, you know, celebrating those who've died, the lives of those who've died. People wear these funky makeup costumes, parades and parties, sing and dance, make offerings to lost and loved ones. There's some typical Day of the Dead costumes and masks, really great. Holi Festival in India, of course, a significant Hindu festival celebrated as the festival of colours, love and spring. Celebrates the eternal and divine love of the deities Radha and Krishna, but it signifies the triumph of good over evil. Okay, it's predominantly celebrated in India, obviously subcontinent, but it's obviously there are celebrations that happen in places all around the world that have an Indian population. So lovely, colourful, spectacular event. So we're going to do a little extended look at New York hip hop culture now, because we can see how these sort of cultures influence or emerge, I guess, if we look at hip hop as a particular sort of case study. And here's a classic sort of street dancing scene, really well photographed. So the term hip hop refers to a many-layered, complex culture comprising of 4 elements. Here's DJ Kool Herc, pioneer of hip hop, there in front of his speakers and guests at the party. So the four elements of hip hop are the DJing or the turntabling, the rapping, which is known as the MCing or the rhyming, graffiti painting, known as graph or writing. Number four, b-boying, which encompasses hip hop dance style, breakdancing, and attitude. So those are the four traditionally sort of acknowledged terms for hip hop. And so it originated predominantly African American South Bronx section of New York in the late 1970s. Its influence now, though, since the 70s, the last 50 years, is enormous, and it's now well integrated into all mainstream cultures. You have to remember, again, that this was very much something that was going on underground. You know, it was a subculture, and a lot of that would have been to do with the police's attitude to it. So it would have been sort of parties would have been shut down, raided, you know, at the time when the sort of black community were treated really, really badly, worse than now. So yeah, hugely influential. And here's Nicki Minaj and Kendrick Lamar, two of the most influential hip hop artists. Early hip hop may have reduced inner city gang violence, may have reduced it by providing an alternative means of expression to physical violence. So it was often, mainly, I suppose, for young black men who were a bit disenfranchised. So it gave them an outlet, okay, for their anger, I guess, about how they're treated and the way they were living. So it's an alternative means. However, during the 1990s, the emergence of commercial and crime-related, like gangster rap and stuff. During the 1990s, violence, drugs, weapons, and misogyny were key themes. So again, it's easy to put a sort of negative flip on hip hop culture and its emergence. But although hardline hip hop culture is to many still misogynist, many female artists have begun to establish themselves. So the wonderful Lauryn Hill, Missy Elliott, Lil' Kim, Young M.A, and others are providing mentorship for new female MCs. In addition, there's a vibrant scene outside the mainstream that provides an opportunity for women in their music to flourish. So the attitudes and stuff are changing. And I think, again, within its own culture, it's not quite such an issue as it is from outsiders like myself, sort of looking in and trying to work out what's going on. So again, there's a cultural kind of like baggage which we take on when we're looking at work from subcultures that we don't really is not part of ours, so we have to kind of accept that. But you know, it continues to evolve from its roots, influencing other genres, both mainstream and niche. And this is the amazing video, Beyonce and Jay-Z's video Ape Shit, produced by Pharrell Williams, won a huge critical acclaim in 2018. Its narrative involves dance routines at the Louvre and the pair posing in front of Da Vinci's masterpiece, the Mona Lisa. So here they are, look, two of the most important cultural figures of our time, really, Beyonce and Jay-Z, posing in front of the Mona Lisa. And it tells you something how important these people are and that they were able to get the Louvre, and film a music video in the Louvre, in front of the Mona Lisa. This is serious stuff. So these people are serious cultural figures. Yeah, we're going to say I absolutely love this video. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to show you just 1 minute of it, but I would really recommend you go and see the whole thing. The quality is not very good on here, and it's pretty spectacular. So enjoy this just for a minute. Yeah, great stuff. I've seen this so many times, it never fails to amaze me, really. Just so many amazing ideas, the dancers, and Beyonce posing next to the white, these sort of statues from earlier civilizations. Um, just real big statements, and here the headless white statue, Beyonce singing in front of it, incredible. And then a lot of these paintings which reference colonial times or much earlier than that, when times of slavery, and when black communities were repressed and exploited. So there's so many amazing references in this piece. It's not just great piece of music and a lot of dancers. There's a lot of thoughts gone into a lot of this. It's really terrific. So yeah, do watch that. I think it's one of the great music videos of our time. So yeah, and in it, Jay-Z appears alone in front of the raft of the Medusa, the painting on the left, which is by Gericault, 1918, and he appears in front of it possibly to honour the theme of immigration, and particularly dear to the Jay-Z and Beyonce, who are known for their minority rights activism. Also, they're seen in front of the portrait of Madeleine, painted here by Benoist in the 1800s as a message of feminism and black people's emancipation. So this is a very, very important painting, a black woman showing intimate parts of her body, not as a slave, very beautiful, very well represented in a classical tradition. So, and this painting's in the Louvre, so they've used that in the video as well. So yeah, it's a great piece. So, and then we can look at graffiti, obviously, as part of the hip hop culture. It began as a way of tagging for one's crew or gang, and developed during the 1970s on the subways of New York, and later expanded to the city walls. So we can see examples from Blade and Zephyr, two of the most important early graffiti artists. This movement actually from the trains to the walls of the city was encouraged by efforts of the New York's Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the MTA, to eradicate graffiti on their property. And in 1989, the MTA actually officially declared the transit graffiti free. Amazingly, I don't think it was particularly, but after that. But anyway, yeah, the graffiti moved onto the streets from the trains, and that was kind of a calculated effort by the New York sort of authorities. We're back with Keith Haring. So this is a famous mural here called 1986, from 1986, called Crack is Whack. And this is on a handball court, which is a court here, handball basketball court, 128th Street and 2nd Avenue, inspired by the crack epidemic and its effect on New York City. It was created as a warning. It was initially executed independently without the city permission. So Keith Haring just put it up there. But, as it became established, it was put under the protection and jurisdiction of the City Department of Parks, and it still exists, I believe. Again, I haven't looked at this for a year or so. I hope it still exists. It's a fantastic piece. The context is magnificent, isn't it? The way it's cited there on the freeway, coming into New York. And here's Keith Haring posing with it, stood on top of these drums. Yeah, so this is hip hop culture, merging with fine art, music, the street. But graffiti art soon moved from the streets to the gallery context. And Adidas funded a major exhibition beyond the streets in Brooklyn in 2019. And I think this is the sort of thing that really irritates people who are generally involved in hip hop culture at its roots. So Adidas has sort of appropriated it and set up an exhibition in a gallery. So it's kind of like making it much more palatable, making it part of the mainstream, and then it loses all its edge and loses all its real interest. Anyway, a lot of people have said that graffiti art was never a real part of the hip hop scene, and its move to a commercial context has confirmed this for many. So they don't see graffiti art as part of hip hop. But it's certainly interesting. It's produced a lot of good work, of course. Jean-Michel Basquiat and Banksy, probably two of the world's most well-known artists, both used their early passion for street graffiti to develop their subsequent work and fame. Basquiat imported tags and symbols from his graffiti art, street graffiti art, into his paintings. Banksy has moved into a more targeted political direction. So this is Banksy's wonderful Girl with the Pierced Eardrums in Bristol, 2018. So we got the Vermeer Girl with a Pearl Earring, but the the earring here is an alarm, burglar alarm. So it's like a very noisy earring, and she's got the COVID mask on, which was put on afterwards. Okay, so original one was 2018, and the mask was put on afterwards, a couple of years later. So again, lots of political points being made here by Banksy. So yeah, both very interesting artists who've come straight out of graffiti and hip hop culture. And this is the Banksy Stormzy collaboration as well, which is particularly impressive. This is Stormzy wearing the stab-proof vest at Glastonbury, I think, on stage at Glastonbury, and he's got the Union Jack in this horribly muted sort of military colours, black and grey, and it's reduced sort of red. So designed by Banksy, worn by Stormzy. So there again, there's a big collaboration there of those involved in music and art. Yeah, so just to finish off, you know, it's incredible to think that hip hop was once a subculture. And so hip hop was a subculture. I think it's kind of pretty mainstream, but there's still a huge subcultural aspects of hip hop, but it's splintered off, hasn't it, into lots, you know, grime, all these other kind of subcultural music and sort of related cultural scenes. So yeah, I think it's so big now, hip hop culture, that we've got the mainstream, but we've still got the roots stuff going on. But I can list here some subcultures which have become mainstream, and I think it's quite interesting. So the Beat Generation, you know, 1960s, Kerouac and people like that, on the road, and the poetry and the traveling and the, you know, that sort of hanging out in cafes and bars and stuff. That's very, very mainstream, that idea now. And the hippies, we saw Glastonbury, and we saw these festivals which are kind of based around a hippie ideal, but are huge income generating machines. Punks, yeah, that was a real subculture in the UK, in America and the UK, 70s onwards, 70s, 80s, which is now kind of constantly reappears in fashion, and other musical acts sort of aping some of the ideas of the punk. Goths, yeah, that was really kind of subculture, wasn't it? We saw it in the Japanese groups, but we see it's a worldwide kind of phenomenon now, which is quite mainstream. Surfers, that's quite an interesting one. Again, the surfers were a very sort of small bunch. Yeah, 60s, 50s, 60s, you know, a small kind of quite quiet sort of group, I think, who just got on with what they loved. But now it's a huge multi-million-pound industry, isn't it? It's in the Olympics. It's kind of like, it's really taken off. Cosplay, we saw the Japanese one, that's a subculture which is much more mainstream again. And I think when we say mainstream, often we mean become quite part of the capitalist kind of machine, money making, quite often that. Grunge, Nirvana, and that sort of starting point. K-pop, the Korean, which was quite a smallish thing emerging from Korea. Now it's like, I don't know, probably the world's biggest music genre, is it? Probably, I don't know. Skater culture, that's a subgroup, isn't it? Again, it really very fashion, linked into fashion now. That used to be a very basic skateboard, but now it's all the clothes, it's all the kind of music, it's everything else that goes with it. Hipsters, yeah, that's an interesting one. Is particularly in the UK, hipsters now run all the coffee shops. they produce the what's the word? Authentic sort of brews and beers, and so they have this sort of not very good name now as being part of the commercial establishment. Hackers, that's an interesting one. So you could say that, yeah. I'm not sure if that's kind of like such an arts culture, but we could say that the hackers, the computer hackers and stuff, are now being used by companies to sort of help them generate income through digital practices. Don't think there's any more. No. Great. Okay, so that's the end of that. I hope it was interesting for you. And yeah. So just I think have a think about how it within your culture, within your subcultures and stuff, how that sort of line between the line between what's art and what's kind of like, what's not, is quite a, where's that made? Who establishes that? It's the institutions, and it's kind of all around us, and we've all got our own little things going on. So just have a think about that with your own cultures. Okay, so 2 weeks time, the next one is on beauty and aesthetics. So Nigel, good point. Would you say cultural art, mostly the context? Yeah, absolutely. I think it would. I mean, there's that old cliche, isn't there? If you stick something in a white wall gallery, it becomes art. So, any of these things we saw with the Gee's Bend carpet makers, stick it in a gallery and it's suddenly become art, and it's very different. It's not used, it's just looked at. So a lot of the stuff we've seen is used in celebration or used in events rather than just looked at. And I think maybe that's the difference. But yeah, good point, Nigel. Context is everything, as we know. That's why this is called contextual studies, isn't it? Because that's what we have to, that's what we have to study, context. But good point, Nigel. Thanks for that. All right, everyone. Beauty is the next one. Aesthetics, which is quite a good one for theory and some quite complex ideas. So just give that some thought between the next one. Where does our idea of beauty come from? It's quite a tricky one. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thanks for attending and your valuable contributions. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, see you next time.